Thursday to you today. I hope everyone is doing really well today, and welcome to this Thursday with Altenew. So we're doing a bit of stamping and coloring today, and I guess I can say we, you and I, and I've got two coworkers with me today. One of which you can see right behind me. The other one is on the floor, his sister, who got the box today. So that was very exciting. I got some craft supplies sent to me, opened the box, got all the paper, packing paper inside, and his sister was faster. So she's sitting in the box right now. So now he has to sit there and give her a dirty look from time to time. So just to let her know that he's got his eye on that box. Super nice to see everybody today. I see Ziamara. Hi, Patty. Hi, Christine. Christine, I was thinking about you today. I hope you're doing well. She says, hello, Sarah and Katz. They're waving back at you. Our lovely Angel is with us today, and she's just popped in a reminder that if you share tonight's live, while we are live, you can be in for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store. So to do that, you just need to share tonight's live while we are live, and then just post in the comments. Let us know that you shared, and then Angel will pick a random winner at the end of tonight's hour, or this morning's hour, depending on where you are. So it's great to see everybody. I'm just popping over to see the comments. Cece, Kimberly, nice to see you. Charlotte from Denmark, you're my neighbor. I'm in northern Germany, so we're not too far apart. Great to see everybody jumping in. And Nettie says, you're becoming a huge fan of Altenew. Yes, welcome to the Altenew Club. We're all huge fans. So it's lovely to see everybody. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. So let's talk about what I have for you today. So this is one of the fun parts of my job when Lydia, you guys all know Lydia from Altenew, when she says, oh, you've got the live scheduled, and we kind of talk about the things I'm going to show you. And sometimes I get to use new things. That was what was in the package. I have some new things for next time, but this time I have an old favorite of mine, which is the Weekend Doodles. So probably lots of you have the Weekend Doodles set, but if not, this is what it looks like. I love this one. It's kind of one of these classics where you can go mixed media if you want to. You can also go really clean and simple. So you've got two really nice wreaths, one with a nice open design and one that's got more detailing in it. You have a nice leaf cluster that also has some of that detailing. And then you have two floral motifs. So this one here, quite large, you can see in proportion to my hand. And then we've got the smaller one here as well. So great to do some corner treatments or to use them as focals. Lots of nice sentiments. One of my favorites, it says, you make my heart happy. And I think that's a really sweet sentiment. Also sending happy thoughts. Just a note to wish you a happy day. Then there's a welcome and so on. So a really nice kind of all around stamp set. And you can see, like, this is just from the back of the packaging. You can see that some of the elements will fit inside that wreath just perfectly. So the other thing that goes along, of course, with the stamp set is the Weekend Doodles dies. Now, this is great, especially for the wreaths. You know, lots of us think, oh, I can fussy cut around that. You don't want to try and fussy cut around the center of a wreath, although probably some of us have done it in a pinch and then thought, oh, I wish there was a die for that. So you've got the two dies for the wreaths, and then you've got the larger elements too. So all really nice, perfectly coordinated. It's a great set, kind of a grab and go. Works for so many different card themes, scrapbook pages too. So one of the things that you'll probably notice when you look at this is, of course, that it's great for coloring in. So we're going to take a look at a couple of coloring options that we have with our stamps today. I've got sprays that I'm going to be using. I've got markers, I've got metallic watercolors, and I've got re-inkers. So I figured we'll kind of get in there and play around and see what we come up with. So let me just check and make sure we're all doing okay. Hi, Nancy and Laura. Hi, Sue. Great to see you. Cece says this will be exciting. Hopefully so. And Brianna, a morning from New Zealand. So great to see everybody. Well, I'm going to switch down my camera and then you can see my work surface. And let's see, I'm going to set my Misty to one side, just bring in my supplies here. I've got all of my different coloring things around me, so I'm ready to go. So again, here is our beautiful stamp set. And let's take a look at how we can use these with our artist markers. So I'll move this out of the way and show you this card example. So this is, it looks like a larger image, but it is actually two of this smaller floral motif. So stamped and die cut. And then I have this onto a die cut background. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what I really want to point out is the coloring in here. And this is our trusty artist markers. So these are Altenews alcohol markers. They're a lot of fun. If you're like me, you've probably got several sets and they just are a workhorse. You can use them and use them. I think I've had mine for several years and they just work beautifully. So let's take a look at how to do some coloring, simple coloring with those. So what I'm going to do is grab first a piece of sturdy white cardstock. Now with artist markers, if you're going to do some coloring with them, you do want to have a cardstock that doesn't have to be watercolor cardstock or anything, but it should be fairly substantial because the inks are pretty intense. So you want to make sure that you don't have something too lightweight. I'm going to grab this little guy off here. And I'm going to use my Misty for this one. Pop this down here. And I'm going to use my Obsidian pigment ink. This is my go-to ink, as many of you know. I do have other inks, but this is the one I go for every single time. So I'm going to be inking this up. And the reason that I go for it every time, you'll see how beautiful it stamps and how beautifully the stamps stamp, but how beautiful this ink is. It's a crisp, intense black. It is a pigment ink, which is different than a dye-based ink. So for example, I'll show you one in a second. Take a look. It gives you such a beautifully crisp look. For example, this being a dye-based ink and this being a pigment ink, they're both black inks, but this one is going to react with water, whereas this one has a bit more staying power. The pigment ink you can also, of course, use with peat embossing. Okay, let me just clean this off quickly and we can get to our coloring. So set that where I won't lose it, hopefully. And then let's start coloring here. So you can see, again, just how beautifully that stamps. It's really nice. And I'm going to grab a couple of my markers. And I'm going to start with the flowers. I've got 3 colors here of the flowers. So you can see like a light, medium, and dark. And they all correspond with the Altenew ink colors. So this one is ruby red. You can see it's a nice, bright, cheerful red. We've got the coral berry, and then this is the frosty pink. So I'm going to start with the frosty pink first of all. And you guys may already know, so these are dual tipped. With the gray band on here, this is the fine tip. And the fine tip looks like this, colors like that. On the other side, you've got the broad tip, which is what you can use either one for coloring in. But what I'm going to do is just kind of base color these. So I'm not being too particular about getting perfect coverage in here because I'm going to add some other colors as well. So I'm just kind of scribbling in some of this light pink. So this is the lightest of my three. Now the black ink will hold pretty well, but I don't want to, because then it really will kind of contaminate things. So just want to make sure that I'm going in the same direction as the lines on my stamp. And just kind of pat this color in. So you can go for a kind of scribbly look if you want to, that's fine. Or you can add in a bit more color. So this is with the first color, just a really soft, easy coloring in there. So that's my lightest one. Now of the other two, I'm going to come in with that coral berry, which is a little bit darker. And I'm going to use, I like to use the broad tip with these. And for this, I'm just going to go along and sort of outline. I'm outlining the petals and I'm going along those stripes. And this is going to add a little bit of dimension. So I'll come around here. There are some people who are brilliant colorists, really do some artistic work with alcohol markers. I am not one of those people, but I love using them. And I think that there's a lot that you can do with them, whether or not you are really proficient with markers. They kind of, in a lot of ways, they do the job for you. Okay, so I'm just going around. So you can see the difference between the two now at this point. And just have a little bit more dimension on there. Okay, and then I'll come along and do the same with the other petal. And I'm using the thicker tip on the artist marker. So as I mentioned, there's a thick and a thin side. And I always, for like detail work, would always use the thin tip. That was kind of my first instinct. And then I took an Altany workshop, and Tasneem said, you can really get a lot of fine detail with the thicker tip. And it's true. So you can get like just the tiniest of dots, even just with this tip, because even though it's broad, it does come to a really fine tip in the end. Okay, so here I've got a little bit more definition on there. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is come in with my darkest color, which is the ruby red. And with this one, I'm going to do the insides, just the flower centers. Now you can go back and rework and blend in some of the lines between these two with a lighter color if you want to, but I'm going to let it be for now. Okay, so just color this in. Now, the reason I've mentioned you do want to have a pretty sturdy cardstock is because, actually this one is sturdy enough. It's not going to be showing through. Sometimes with a lighter weight paper, because alcohol ink pens, and this is kind of just in general, will bleed through that. So you do want to make sure, especially if you're working, on your table. Always have a craft mat underneath. Okay, now for our leaves, I've got Forest Glades. So we're going to come in and color just as before, kind of base color the leaves. And again, this is such a nice, simple stamp. It really does make it easy to add some color in here. You don't have a whole lot of detail area that you need to fill. So if you are looking for something relaxing to do, stamping some of these and coloring them and die cutting would be a great way to not only have elements on hand, when you need to make a quick card, but it's also just kind of find it a little bit therapeutic coloring. Okay, so again, I'm just going to add in some quick color here, and I will add a little bit of definition with a darker shade too. And so of course I use the pinks on the flowers, but it would look really beautiful with blues or yellows. You can do the same type of thing if you've just got 3 colors in the same sort of family. Okay, I'm using that pointy tip to get into the detail. So I've got some green on here, and then I'm going to come in with my evergreen, which is the darker shade. And I'm really not adding a whole lot in here except to go along the center of these leaves. Nice simple shapes so you don't have to worry about things being totally perfect. And then there you go, quick and easy colored flower. So then all I need to do, of course, is grab my dies, pop one down, got this ready to go, and then I can simply die cut. And I did 2 of these, as I mentioned, for this card. And then this gives me a nice little accent piece on the side. So you could even make a wreath. You can make a border if you wanted to. If you had like a 12 by 12 scrapbook page, you can do a lot of really cool things just by layering up several of these little guys. And don't forget, I have it going this way, but you can have it going the other way too. So whichever way you want it to go, it is totally up to you. Now for the rest of the elements on the card, I do want to show that to you too. So let me show you the dies that I'm using for this. Now with a clean and simple card design like this, you can either work with pattern paper as your background. You could just use a plain white or a plain colored background. I really like the gradient stripes die because, well, as you can see, because it gives you a nice geometric background, and geometrics always work nicely with florals. They create a really nice visual balance, but it's not something that is so distinctive that it will compete with the floral. So hopefully you see what I mean. So for example, let's see. I love these little storage pouches from Altenew because sometimes I just cut things and then I decide not to use them and then I have a place to put them along with the die. So here it is with black. Here it is, of course, with white. So you can do some really fun layering. You could have something brighter and bolder. I don't have that die cut, but you can kind of see how that would look. That would be really interesting, really striking, of course. Or you can go with the white on white, which is what I did. But keep in mind, let's see, I've got some other cardstock over here. Also looks great with maybe a tan color. You could do that. You could go with a bright green. You could do lots of different layering options, whether it is tone on tone, like what I did with the white, or if you want to do something that is a little bit more high contrast. It just depends. It's totally up to you and whatever occasion you're making the card for. So lots of fun to do. And again, you could just do one of these elements. You could do several. You could have it coming around the edge of the card and so on. So really, really cool options with that. So this is the gradient stripes die. Obviously one that I have used a lot. Oh, and I have to tell you too, when you die cut this, you do end up with all of the like little innies, which you can save like I do. So these are all of the little parts that come out when you die cut it. And I will tell you that these are the perfect width and perfectly cut for putting on sentiments. And I'll show you an example of that later. But anyway, keep all of those little scraps. As you can see, I do. You're not a crafter unless you have bags of scraps, of tiny scraps of paper that you know you will use one day. The other elements that I've got going on here, I've got this thanks die, which is from, you guys have seen me use this a lot. Again, a favorite, the signature words die. So you've got the hello, thanks, and congrats. Really nice scripty sentiment on here. And I've added in, I feel like I'm really predictable. I've added in another element that I like, which is the satin gold sequins. So I just use a little bit of white glue and a toothpick and then pop those on there. and really make sure that they are glued on in place, dried, so the glue is dried and they are in place before handling. And that just gives you another nice little bit of sparkle. But I really like that white on white in this case. But again, kind of intrigued by the idea of doing black and white with that too. So that is our first coloring technique today with our artist markers. And again, you only need like a handful of colors. I always, when I'm shopping for markers or inks or anything color-wise, always go for a green, especially if you like to do a lot of florals, because leaves come into the floral composition as well. Okay, let's take a look at another coloring option for us. And this one is another really cool coloring medium from Altenew, and this is their metallic shimmer sprays. So I'm using a couple of them that I've had for a very long time. They just don't ever seem to go down in quantity. I feel like I've had these forever and I'm not any further down on the bottle. They're either refilling themselves or I'm not using as much as I thought. So what I'm going to do with this one is stamp and do a little bit of watercoloring with the metallic shimmer sprays. So of course, first thing about these, they are a spray, which means that you would normally, spritz with them. You can do that. You can also, though, decant some of this onto your craft mat and do a little bit of painting, which is what I'm going to do. But first, let's see. First thing, I'm going to stamp my floral accent onto some watercolor cardstock. So again, because it's a watery medium, you do want to make sure you've got cardstock that can accept a watery medium. So this is where a nice watercolor card will come in handy. And I'm going to use this nice big floral motif here. I love this one. This is one of those stamps too that you can go into autumn colors with if you are headed into autumn, or just love colors. Works really well. Okay, so I'm going to pop that down and again ink it up with my obsidian, my obsessive obsidian. It's really, those of you who have this ink pad, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a fantastic black ink pad. It's really, really, really just works for every type of medium, I find. Okay, so I'm going to stamp this on here. Make sure that I've got that there. I'm going to do it one more time. I've got some texture on this watercolor cardstock, so I want to make sure I do this really well. Okay, and there we go. Clean this off a bit. And let's see. Okay. Again, working onto my craft mat. I'm running out of space around here. Okay, I set that there. Now what I'm going to do is grab two of these colors that go together. And I really like using the Puffy Heart and the Orange Cream. Now what you want to do, because these are a metallic shimmer, they do need to be shaken. So I think you can hear that rattling ball in there. Then you know that it's already mixed. So give this one a bit of a shake too. And then working onto my craft mat and working with a water brush. So I've got my handy little water brush here. I'm just going to decant a little bit of the color on here. I am not going to spritz it on here. I could, but that's going to spray it in places I don't want it to be. So I'm just going to take out the, I don't know what this thing is called. I know that somebody will know the technical term for this thing, but you just need to take that out and you can decant a little bit of that color on here. So I've done that with the Orange Cream, and we'll get out a bit of the Puffy Heart too. I call it the straw. I'm sure that there's a technical term for it though. And then I'm just going to do some painting with it. So get my brush wet, add a little bit here. And then I'm going to color in my flowers. I like to do a nice watery touch to start. You can always add more color, more intensity, but it's a little bit hard to take it away. So come in here, and again, this is where you do want to have some paper or cardstock that's going to withstand a watery medium. Sometimes I think with coloring, it's really, the paper is more important than we give it credit for. And sometimes our mistakes or our problems that we may have with coloring come down to what kind of paper we're working on. If you've ever worked with really, really nice paper, you know the difference. You can feel the difference. Okay, so just popping down some of this color. This is the orange cream, nice and bright and cheerful. And I could stop with just the orange cream because this is a lot of fun as it is. But I figure since I've got the puffy heart, which is that really nice bright pink, why not add a little bit of that in here too? And just following the lines that are drawn on the stamp. So I'm not inventing any of my own shading or anything like that. I'm just going by the lines and letting them guide me. And having already some watery medium on there, it's really kind of picking up some of that color. You can see how this is coming along. Let's get a little bit more up here. And here we go. It's a fun design. It's when they say like a whimsical type of look, this is definitely what I would consider to fall into that category. But it's not cutesy. It's still got some sophistication to it. Still grown up whimsy. Okay, so this is still pretty wet. I'm gonna get this really, really watery, but not clean it off and not have it too watery. And then pick up some more of this orange and then just kind of color this in a little bit. And maybe do a bit with undiluted puffy heart. And just come along here. And don't worry about it being perfectly tidy or not. Okay, so the flowers, again, like we talked about before, they can be any of your favorite colors, whatever colors you have on hand, whatever colors you like to work with. Some of us tend to go to the blues and greens kind of instinctively. So I'm always trying to push myself to do something in some different colors. Okay, so I've got that down. Now I've also got two green colors. I've got Mountain Mist and I have Lagoon. So this one has kind of a bluish effect to it. I'm going to start with the Mountain Mist, which is the lighter of the two. And the same process, just use the little straw to get a bit of that color on there. And this is really concentrated color, so you don't need a whole lot. Oh, I just noticed that a comment or a question came up. Gwen was wondering, do you heat set the ink before you do the watercoloring? No, I don't. I do make sure that it's dry. Like it does for a pigment ink, it does dry fairly quickly, but I don't heat set it. You certainly can though. And I know a lot of people kind of do that instinctively. So if you want to, you can, but I don't tend to. This pigment ink is, if you've used other pigment inks, other brands, or even Altenew has some other like metallic pigment inks, they are slow drying. That's part of the reason that you can heat emboss with them. But this one does tend to dry more quickly, which means that it does make it good for an overall black stamping ink because you don't have to heat set it every time you're doing anything. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so again, just coloring in with that mountain mist, nice and light. And then let's do a little bit of our lagoon on here. And again, just kind of popping in some of that color. And if you find that you've got more than you wanted, just grab that corner of like a dry cloth or something, and you can kind of suck up some of that excess if you need to. But one of the nice things about doing some watercolor techniques is that you do get some really interesting looks. It's a very relaxing coloring option. And I notice I've got some bleeding in here, so I'm just going to come in and take a little bit of clean water and sort of scoot that around. Okay, so now this is not entirely dry, but I think you can get the gist of it. Really fun, bright colors. Now, the other thing that I've done with this card is I've added some spattering around here, and that is from the Puffy Heart. Now, you'll notice when I did my spattering, I have spatters on the background, which is where I wanted it. I also have some spatters on top of my design, which is also fine because I really wanted this to have a quite loose and watercolory imperfect look to go along with the doodled effect. So you can see I haven't even painted all the way to the edges there. Got some white showing. So to do that, let me clean this up before I put my paper into it or my hand or one of the cats. Before I do that, what I can do, the way that I do my spattering is not by spraying it. It's by, again, using the what did we call that? The straw, the tube. So I'll show you how I did that. If you don't want any spattering on there, go back to your die set because you can always just die cut a piece of scrap paper and use it as a mask. So if you want to do that, die cut that. This is still a little bit wet, but you'll get the gist of it. Pop it on top. Okay, I'm going to come back with this. Again, not spattering, not spraying. I'm just going to tap the color on here. Again, use your craft mat to protect your work surface and whatever else you might have laying around. You can use as much or as little as you want to. And then, let's lift this off. You've got your spattered background. So again, whether you are okay with some of your spattering getting onto your floral motif, or if you want to keep that clean, you've got some options there. So that is our second technique, our second coloring technique. Ooh, gotta clean this up. So you can see you definitely do want to have a craft mat or something protecting your works. Even if you're not spraying. Definitely if you're spraying, put it in a cardboard box. Really makes things a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside because it is wet, but I want to show you just again the background. Now the stamp that I've got on here is of course from the same stamp set. I've added some more of those sequins and a little bit of gold embroidery thread on there. And what I like is, you can get some really different looks. So just depending on what medium you're doing, if you're going for clean and simple, something a little bit more watercolory, you've got some options there. All right, so another option that you have is metallic watercolor. We're going from our metallic mists. And I have to say, with the misting or with the metallic on these, it is a subtle metallic. This one is still a little bit wet, so it's trickier to see. But there's a very soft shimmer to it. It's an iridescence. It is not a high impact glitter. So if you like a softer look with your shimmer and shine, this is a good option for you. Another good option is metallic watercolors. So these are some of my favorites. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. I really got the chance to use any and all of my favorite things in this show. So I'm pretty excited. So the metallic watercolors, a really nice set. As you can see, you've got some warm tones, you've got some cool tones. I've labeled mine on here, but they are labeled on the pan. So this is the aquamarine, for example. I just did this so I would remember which ones go where. So these can all be taken out. I'm going to take out, let's see, what did I use? I am going to use the citrine, is that citrine, and jade, green, and then also bronze. Okay, so I've got those out, and then I can set this to one side, whichever side I can find, and I can use this for some easy painting in. And here you can really see the shimmer on this. So let's see. Once again, I've got another one I can show you. Once again, I'm going to grab some watercolor cardstock and my Misty. Pop this down, and let's position these kind of coming onto the side. So they make really nice focals, as we've seen, but they also make really nice accents, like a corner treatment. Okay. Same thing as before. I'm going to use my obsidian black and ink this up. And the metallic watercolors, if you've never used them before, they work exactly like regular watercolors do. And in fact, if you don't have the metallic watercolors, of course, the same technique can be used with the regular ones too. I just thought, let's add a little bit of shine today. Okay, do this one more time. And let's see, here we go. All right. And again, just make sure that I get some of that excess ink off. And put these over here. Okay. If you're hearing any crinkling in the background, it was my little cat getting out of her box of paper. So sorry about that. Oops, and I've got some of that obsidian black on here where I didn't want it, but such is the life of a stamper. You do end up with stray bits of black in different places. Okay, so now I've got my stamping on here, again with the obsidian. Now I'm going to come in with these three colors and just do a little bit of painting in. Again, I'm going to be using my water brush, clean it off from my mists. And I've got a water mister. And what I like to do is really get some nice amount of water in the pans themselves. And that just kind of let it sit for a second, let it interact with that water so that it softens it a little bit. And I'm going to start here with the citrine. And then just make sure that I've got a nice kind of soft effect. These can be pretty opaque, so you don't want to go full strength necessarily at the start. Just start with a bit softer look. Again, I'm working on some watercolor cardstock. So hold that medium. And just picking up some of the watery paint from my craft mat. So I'm using this as a palette. Okay, and let's do this one here too. Again, just really simple coloring. You don't have to be perfect at coloring. You don't have to be perfect at anything. But the coloring, because these are such whimsical and casual kinds of drawings, really do lend themselves well to a more casual approach to coloring, which is nice. And don't forget, these can go beautifully with your colored pencils as well. In fact, I was thinking about getting some of those out too, and I thought, oh, that's going to be more than our stamping hour tonight. So I'll have to save that for another time. So you can start to see the shine on here. Well, I know it's a shine of it being a wet medium, but you do get some really nice shimmer. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more up here with our other flower. So this is the smaller one. And again, really nice and easy. And this one here too. And I thought I would try, rather than going with the blues and the greens of the metallic watercolors, I thought I'd go with something a little bit darker, just to give another look. Okay, so here's the bronze. Again, just going to add in some detailing on here, following the lines that are already on the stamp. So I don't have to reinvent anything. I don't have to do any fancy shading or shadowing. Just color this in, and it's going to give me a lot of nice variety. Okay, let's do a bit more up here. And kind of move that out with a little bit more water. So water is always your friend with this kind of technique. You can smudge things around, move color around. Okay. Then I've got this beautiful jade. Clean off my brush and then come in and add some of the jade in here for the leaves. Really simple and easy to do. Again, you can go all the way to the edges of each of the images, or you can just kind of scribble that in. Take advantage of the doodle effect of the stamps. Okay, so I'm just going to scribble this in here for these leaves too. And we're good. And you can see, again, with these, as with the sprays, a little goes a long way. And this is what I appreciate as a crafter. I like having things that are a good value, because it's nice to know that you can have something and it's not going to last you, a couple of days. These will last you a good long time. If you like doing coloring, it's a great investment. Okay, so I'm just going to finish off the centers here. And there we go. So again, while this is still wet, I can still do some more, wet on wet techniques, or I can let it dry and come back and add a little bit more detailing or more color on there. Now, the other thing you can do is come back and add more water with your water brush in a more detailed way. You can also, of course, mist this while it is still a little bit wet, and that will soften things. You can also come in with a damp baby wipe, and you can kind of pick up and blot some of the color if you want to lighten things. So if you've found that you've got something a bit too dark, a baby wipe that is damp is a great way to rework some of that. You can also do blending this way. So consider that. Always have something like this on hand, and then you can do a little bit more blending and coloring techniques. Okay, so just 3 of the colors, that's all you need to add some really nice shimmer and shine to this. Oh, the other thing I do want to point out before I put my watercolors away is that when you've got some water in here, I usually will put them back into their places in the tray. But while they're wet, don't close it up. Let it air dry, and it's just better for your watercolors. So just a little tip, make sure that you've got those dry before you close up your tin, put it away. Okay, so here's, I was going to show you this. This is another one. I did some more spattering on here too. You can get a really nice shimmery look. Again, go clean and simple or do a little bit more mixed media if you want to. So with this card, I've added the just a note to wish you a happy day. That's the stamp from the stamp set. And then I've also got the hello from the signature words and some more of those sequins on there. And it all comes together really pretty easily. So there you can see the shine on there, even though it's dry. Looks great. Okay, one more sample I think we've got time for. I'm going to set this one aside. And okay, so let's talk about re-inkers. Now, re-inkers are these wonderful things that you buy when you buy your ink pads, right? They always tell you, when you buy an ink pad, always get the re-inker because your ink pad will inevitably go dry or start getting a bit rough at 10 o'clock the night before you need to have this card finished or a project that you're working on. So it is always a really good idea to have re-inkers on hand, particularly, I will say, for embossing ink pads. These are the ones that I tend to have to re-ink because I think I use them the most. With Altenew, I've found that my ink pads stay wet for quite a long time. So I'm really using the re-inkers not for re-inking my ink pads, but for other things because they do come in these wonderful little tubes and you've got lots of different options with them as a wet medium. And I've used Parrot and Aqualicious, two of my favorite colors, in combination with that outline wreath. So for this one, what I've done, and I've already gone ahead and stamped and embossed it. And the reason I did that is because my embossing tool is dying a slow death. And I thought if I demonstrated it for you, we would be here forever. And it's just it takes a really long time to heat set anything with this embossing tool. It's at the end of its life, I think. So in order to spare you, I already went ahead and did some heat embossing, but I used the copper embossing powder from Altenew. I know I usually for the rose gold, but I have this beautiful jar of copper, and so that's what I've been using in combination, of course, with the embossing ink pad. Okay, so those are what I've used for this. And again, I'm just going to be coloring in really simply. So using my craft mat as my palette and also to protect my table, all I'm going to do is just decant a little bit. This is the Parrot. So you can see how this comes out. It's, in fact, let me show you on a piece of cardstock. It is really intense. It is dark. It is dense. If you've worked with the Parrot as the ink color itself on the ink pad, you know it's kind of a springy green. It's a really nice lighter green. But in this case, you can see with that re-inker just how intense that color is. So this makes it great for coloring in. So that's all I need of my Parrot. And then I'm going to get a little bit of the Aqualicious too. So again, just a little drop of it. In fact, they are both so dark and so dense, it's almost impossible to tell which one is which. So then all I'm going to do is just add some water in here. And again, I'm just going to grab my water brush, kind of pull out some of that color. Of course, you know, the more water you use, the more diluted your color will be. Rinse that off and bring this color out. Look how pretty look how beautiful that color is. One of my favorites. Okay, now I'm not too worried about my colors mixing because I do want them to kind of mix and mingle on here. The cool thing about this is because I've embossed this and heat set it, the embossing gives a raised edge, which helps to hold in your watery medium. And it also gives a little bit more shine and dimension and, of course, a beautiful outline on here. So I'm just going to come in my water brush and start with my lighter color, which is the Parrot. And then just do a couple of leaves sort of randomly around here. You can, of course, do all of the leaves in this color. And you'll notice that depending on how much water you've got, which part of your puddle you pick it up from, you may have some darker areas and some lighter areas. So you can do this with just one of the re-inker colors because you can see I'm getting a lot of variety in here just by pulling from the undiluted color. So this makes a really pretty, simple green wreath. But I want to work in some of that Aqualicious too. So let's see here. Again, I can mix those two colors on my craft sheet. And I can also mix them while they are on, while working wet on wet with my cardstock. And again, I did this onto watercolor cardstock. So this is helping me to keep that watery medium in place. So I love this combination together. You can start to see how this is coming together really easily. And again, if you did the whole wreath in just several shades of the parrot, for example, or any of the other colors that you would have liked, you can get a lot of variety that way. And working in one other color will give you even more options. Working in another color after that would be cool too. So if you had like a maybe a nice autumn batch of colors, that would be a lot of fun. My mind is on autumn for some reason. Maybe I'm done with summer. Okay, you can mix the two. You can mix and blend on here. And again, all of that embossing, that heat embossing is holding in that watery medium. And now I can kind of look and say, oops, I need to go all the way to the edges on here, right in there. And there you go. This would actually be really pretty as an element on a Christmas card as well. I'm just realizing now I'm really looking ahead, not just to autumn, I'm going straight to Christmas. Okay, then what I would do is let this dry, and I do let it air dry. It doesn't take very long. Again, working with a nice sturdy cardstock, it's going to prevent anything from bleeding. And you can see we really did not need to use even that much of the re-inkers. So if you've got those re-inkers on hand and you bought them in order to re-ink your dye-based, your dye inks, as you can see, you can use them for other things before you need to use them for re-inking. So I die cut my wreath and then just popped it up with some foam tape. I've got more of that embroidery thread on here. Here's the congrats. And guess what I used for the backing? It's one of the leftover strips from my gradient stripes background die. Now the background that I used on here is another die that I like a lot for backgrounds like this. And it's the Layered Plaid Cover Die B, which is a mouthful. I don't have the Layered Plaid Cover Die A, but if you do have the two of them, the gist is you die cut this, and then you die cut this, and then you put them one on top of the other, which would be beautiful. So I have half the plaid, and it served me well for a long time. So as you can see, lots of fun with this. Now I die cut that plaid from white cardstock. I'll lift this up a little bit so that you can see. And underneath, I've got a background that has been done with, I should have done this before I cleaned it up, done with the re-inkers. So we've got a second or two left. Let me just grab a piece of cardstock and I'll show you this. Okay. Move everything aside. First, I'm going to mist my craft mat, a little bit of water, and then I'm just going to add in some of my parrot and some of my Aqualicious. Just scribble that on there. get my water brush and blend this out. I'm going to leave some white patches in there too, so I don't need to cover the whole thing entirely. So it looks like I just have a mess on there, a really pretty colored mess, but a mess nonetheless. Grab some white cardstock. This is not watercolor cardstock. This is just, kind of a sturdy white cardstock. Come in here and basically just pick this up, just mop it up. And you'll end up with really fun and easy backgrounds. And then what you can do, so I've got that one, I can add a little bit more water. This is nice if you end up with like extra bits of cardstock. You kind of think, oh, I'll just grab a stash from my scraps and then make up some nice backgrounds. So of course you can go with darker, bolder color or something a little bit softer. So this is another fun way to use those re-inkers and your craft mat too. Use your craft mat not just to protect your work surface, but you can also use it as a palette. And so then I've just layered that die on top of that background. Easy peasy. Added the congrats from the signature words dies. And we are ready to go. So we have looked at one stamp set, 4 different ways to color with it. And I think, hopefully, you have been able to see that there are a lot of really fun coloring options with this stamp set. And you get a lot of different looks. And I don't even think we've touched the tip of the iceberg here. So whether you're using your metallic watercolors or your sprays, not as sprays, or your artist markers, or your re-inkers, lots of fun different ways that we can play with these stamps. So I'm going to switch up the camera now. Hang on, I'm going to find my stamp set first so I can show that to you again. And then tilt up the camera so we can see each other again. Hang in there with me. Okay, there we go. And we are just right at an hour. So with me, if you sat through the whole thing, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got some inspiration for pulling out those stamps and some of your coloring meetings that you may have on hand. So just a quick recap, we were playing with the Weekend Doodles stamp set. I didn't even get a chance to use that would be fun, and this other wreath too. So we were using mainly this wreath, this one up here as well. So lots of really fun options that you can do with that. And then of course also the Weekend Doodles die, which I recommend, especially if you want to do something like this and do your die and foam tape. It's always going to be easy to do it with a cutting die. And I'll whiz through some of the other cards as well. So we were working with our artist markers of different colors to create some colorful accents on a clean and simple card. We've got our sprays, our metallic sprays. You don't have to spray with them. You can paint with them too. And then our watercolor, metallic watercolors. A little bit of shimmer and shine. And we were using, let's see, Layered Plaid Cover Die B for a really fun plaid effect. And it's over here somewhere, the Gradient Stripes die. Not to forget about the signature words dies as well. So hopefully you have enjoyed tonight's quick whistle-stop tour through different coloring mediums. I really do thank all of you for joining me today. Thank you to Angel for popping in all of the links and know the different products that we are using. Hopefully you have been inspired. And yeah, let's take a look at some of those older stamp sets and have fun with those as well. The new stuff is great. I can't wait to get my hands on that. But sometimes it's good to take out some of the coloring medium file. So don't forget, you've got another second or two to share tonight's live while we are on live, and then the lovely Angel will be choosing $15 over at the Altenew store. So good luck to you all. I hope you have a wonderful week, rest of the week and weekend. And I will see you for another live, not until the end of next month. I may see some Altenew classes before. So do take care, and I hope you have a week. So thanks again for joining, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.